you. Let's talk about our future, the future of our party, our politics, and our country. Most of you were lucky enough to spend your childhoods here. I was not. I was born here, but grew up under socialism. So I know the reason why millions of people from all over the world want to live here. It is because they know they can build a future here. But we can all feel a growing sense that the future is not as bright as it once was. That despite all of our strengths, our history, and our potential, we have lost control. And this is not just because of the mistakes Labour are making, and they are making many mistakes. It's because of the mistakes that we made. Labour are only there because people no longer believed in the Conservatives. We dealt with some of the most profound challenges faced by any government since World War II. The aftermath of the financial crisis, COVID, Ukraine. But we ended up mired in scandal, unable to deliver on our promises, and fundamentally distrusted. It's time for something completely different. The British people are yearning. They are yearning for something better, and this Labour government is not it. Labour have no ideas. At best, they are re-announcing things we have already done, and at their worst, they are clueless, irresponsible, and dishonest. They are trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the public about the state of Britain's finances, placing political donors into civil service jobs, pretending that they had no plans to cut pensioner benefits before the election, and then doing exactly that to cover the cost of pay rises for the unions with no promise of reform. But their model of spend, spend, spend is broken, and they don't know what to do. And this will only lead to even more cynicism in politics. They are already making worse mistakes than we did. But if we want to become worthy of the British people's trust again, we can't just sit around pointing out how terrible Labour are. That's just not good enough. And we can't just keep having the same policy arguments from the last Parliament. We are not in power. We lost. Labour will fail. And when that time comes and the British people are looking for change, we have to be that change. We have to focus on renewal, the renewal of our party, our politics, and our thinking. And it starts with principles. Principles are the fundamentals that give us direction, unity, and certainty. They must underpin everything we do. Here are a few of my principles. First, I believe in personal responsibility. My late father once said to me, only 20% of what happens to you is down to others. 80% is down to your actions and your choices. That is why I believe in personal responsibility. That is why I know that the government cannot solve all our problems, and nor should it try to. Government should nurture a fair and safe society in which people can prosper by their own efforts. A government that tries to do everything will likely end up achieving nothing. It will also run out of everybody's money. This was one of our mistakes. We talked right but governed left, sounding like Conservatives but acting like Labour. Government should do fewer things but better, and what it does, it should do with brilliance. Second, I believe in citizenship. Citizenship is not just about having a passport. It is a commitment to a country and the people in it. A country belongs to its citizens. It is nothing without them. We cannot treat their needs or concerns as secondary or inconvenient or of a lower priority than anyone else's. People should not be made to feel guilty for questioning levels of immigration, legal or illegal, if it is changing the place they know and love. And government should not be shy of doing whatever it takes to change things. If people don't want their taxes to pay for foreign criminals to be in our jails or on our streets, those criminals should be removed. If they want local people to have priority for housing, for benefits, for school places, we must make that happen. Our country is not a dormitory for people just here to make money or a hotel for those passing through. It is our home, and no one else will look after it. Third, I believe in equality under the law. If citizenship is to mean something, then our laws must apply equally to all citizens. Anything else breeds division and resentment. In government, I saw just how malign and destructive identity politics had become. Laws brought in to protect everyone were used by left-wingers to protect certain groups over others. We have seen in history what happens when governments do this. That must not happen here. And that is why, when everyone was talking about the 5 new MPs from Reform, I was far, far more worried about the 5 new MPs elected on the back of sectarian Islamist politics, alien ideas that have no place here. It's the sort of politics we need to defeat, and defeat quickly. Fourth, I believe in the family. The foundation of our society is not the individual, it is the family. Whether it's the family we're born into or the family we built, my family is everything to me. It's everything to most of us. And sometimes government just doesn't get family. It wants to help with childcare, not because it loves children, but so that their mums can get back to work quickly. We need to celebrate families. We need to place them at the center of our politics and our actions, for the good of society, not for the good of the Treasury. Fifth, thank you. Fifth, and most importantly, I believe in truth. Truth is not relative. Those who know me best know that I don't do spin. I do charm, sometimes. Sometimes I do charm. But I think life is better when people say what they think. I think politics is better when we tell it like it is. Spin can only get you so far. It is better to deal with hard truths today than big problems tomorrow. And this has been the central failure of politics for 25 years, maybe even longer. For too long, politics has just been about working out what the voters want to hear and then saying it back to them. It is the triumph of words over deeds, and that has to change. It has to change because principles only mean something if you turn them into action. Policy without action is just chat. But our whole system is broken. In government, I had to keep fighting that system, a system that has evolved over recent decades to stop governments doing things they were elected to do. I would see a problem, try to fix it, and be told, sorry, Minister, you can't do that. People would ask me for help. They would ask me to intervene. And when I tried to, I was told, it's not a good look. Ministers should not get involved like that. Well, I like to get involved. It's time to make sure that governments can do what they're elected to do. Because if they cannot, then democracy does not mean anything. We need to reboot, reset, and rewire. Rewire the way that government works so that it can serve the public. Nothing is more important, and that is why we are here at the Institute of Engineering and Technology. Right now, this country desperately needs an engineer. Engineers fix problems. We do tough stuff. Getting my engineering degree was much harder than running for the leadership of the Conservative Party. But it gave me a whole new way of looking at the world. Engineers are realists. We see the world as it truly is, but we can also dream, and we can plot a path from idea to reality. We don't make things better just by using words. There is little room for error in what we do. When I worked in banking, if my code broke, people would lose their money. If engineers build a plane badly, it crashes. A bridge built to the wrong spec comes tumbling down. So we know how to build systems that work. It is because we understand trade-offs. We don't try to do everything. We understand how to manage limitations and expectations. Every engineer has had to explain the magic triangle of quality, cost, and time. Things can be good. They can be fast, they can be cheap, but they can't be all three. Many politicians simply do not understand that. That's why they run into trouble. Too often, politicians pretend that we can have everything. So they make promises they cannot keep. They say you can spend more on everything and still have lower taxes. They say that there are huge efficiencies to be had in government without identifying them. They propose huge changes without making plans. Engineers accept reality. Engineers are honest. Engineers get stuff done. I am an engineer. I want to help us rebuild the party, rewire the state, reboot the economy, revive our country and make it go places. And we need to do this because the challenges of the next decade are going to be even bigger than what has come before. This is why my campaign is called Renewal 2030 and not Kemi for leader. The problems of the future cannot be solved by one person. The Reform Party cannot solve them. Liberal Democrats cannot solve them. The Labour Party will not solve them. So we need to renew the Conservative Party so they can solve the problems that will plague the next decade. How do we deal with global mass migration? What jobs will be left when artificial intelligence is doing all the fun stuff? How do we know what is real when so much is not? How does an NHS designed for a young working population adapt to a complex aging population? When Taiwan is under threat from China, when Israel is under threat from Iran, when Ukraine is at war with Russia, we need to ask ourselves if we are ready for this dangerous new world. We cannot rely on laws from the 1950s or assumptions of the 1980s. We need to renew our thinking. The renewal of our party, our politics, is vital if we are to renew our country and its position in the world. I don't pretend I have all the answers, but I'm an engineer. I know how to find them. So let's use this time in opposition wisely. When I was young, I mean, I still am, but when I was younger, the future was exciting. I hate the fact that young people no longer find it so. For the future to mean anything, it must mean something to the young. The Conservatives used to have a vision and an offer for the young. We use the words growth and opportunity and enterprise, but what do we really mean? It's the chance to build something, a career, a business, a family, to acquire capital, and through it, security, savings, a house, pensions, and investments, so that even if today is tough, tomorrow is bright. We have always believed that government should help you in that endeavor, not get in your way, that it should be fair and honest and even-handed, that it should share and strengthen the values and the spirit of the nation, that the dynamism that such enterprise unleashes will enrich us all. We need to be confident Conservatives again. We need to be confident Conservatives again because our party has principles, the very best principles. They are the principles of the British people, the principles not of the centre ground, but of the common ground. They are the source of our country's strength, its heritage, and its future. With the right engineering, there is no limit to what we can do. So it is time. It is time to begin this work. It is time to give new hope. It is time to renew. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I will now take questions from the media. I can tell they're sitting over there because they didn't stand up when everybody else was. Yeah, so first, there's some here. Thank you. So first question is Chris Mason from the BBC. Chris? Oh, hi.
You talked there about, in a critique of the previous government, of talking right but governing left. In specific terms, can you give us some examples of where you think that was the case? To give us a sense of how you might approach opposition and the prospect of government differently.
Thank you. It's a great question. There were many things which I felt that we did in the last government, when I was in and when I was a backbencher, which were big state rather than limited state. What we did with net zero, in my view, was an example. We all want to deliver a better environment, but creating legislation and a target without working out how we were going to do it, in my view, was trusting regulation rather than innovation. That, for me, is an example of talking right, yet governing left. We need to move away from just telling people what they want to hear. We need to start thinking through how we are going to deliver on our promises. And that's something that I'm making at the heart of my campaign. It is why one of my principles is truth and honesty. Thank you. Next, we have Carl Dinnan from ITV.
Thank you very much. I'm curious about your campaign name. The next general election has to be held by mid-2029. Have you already written it off?
No, not at all. Because it's not just about the next general election. Quite often, we talk about winning without talking about what we are winning for. My campaign name is... Thank you. It's not just about the general election. It's not just about the party. It is about the whole country. I remember in 2019, we just won an 80-seat majority. And I thought we were going to have the roaring 20s. I was turning 40, I'd been planning this big party, and before you knew it, it was COVID, we'd lost the government, prime ministers have changed, and now we're having a Labour government, and it's just 2024. And we are not going to be in government unless something very significant happens for the rest of this decade. You're right, an election is likely to be 2029, it could be earlier. But it's about the 2030s now. What does that future decade look like? In engineering, you don't start planning for things after they arrive. You think ahead, and we need to start thinking 10, 15 years' time, not just about the immediate parliamentary cycle that we're in. Thank you. And next on my list, I have Martin Beckford from the Daily Mail.
Thank you. Almost every profile of you describes you as combative or confrontational, divisive, whatever. What do you say to people who say that that approach would make it difficult for you to lead the party effectively?
I would say to them that I am combative on behalf of my party, not with my party. Many of you who have seen me being confrontational at Dispatch Box will see that it is when Labour is attacking Conservatives. I think it is important to defend my values. And I'm a very straightforward person. I'm very straight talking. Some people don't like directness. Some people don't like bluntness. But that is who I am. And that is how I will fight for our party and for our values if I am leader. Thank you. Catherine Forster from GB News. Catherine?
Catherine Forster, GB News. Thank you. You've said that not growing up in Britain, you realise how very lucky we are to live here and that millions of people would like to live here. So we've had Robert Jenrick saying a cap of tens of thousands. We've had Tom Tugendhat saying a cap of 100,000. Can you give us some specifics in numbers and how you plan to deal with legal and illegal migration? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm really glad you asked the migration question, because what you have said shows and illustrates quite well where things went wrong. We had a cap of tens of thousands when David Cameron came in. We need to ask ourselves, why didn't that work? Rather than just saying, we'll make another promise. Something went wrong there. So it's not just about throwing out numbers and throwing out targets. Something is wrong with the system. So I'm talking about the system. People who are throwing out numbers and saying, oh, well, we'll leave the ECHR and so on, are giving you easy answers. That is how we got in this mess in the first place. I'm not going to do that. But Catherine, I don't want it to sound like I haven't thought about what to do. I have been thinking about it. And I think that the first thing starts with who we get to enforce our borders. Many of the people that we ask to enforce our borders are actually more interested in doing other things. They feel squeamish about it. They're not bad people, but it's not what they came in to do. You look at many of the officials that I met from the Home Office, for example, they'd come from refugee charities. They wanted to look after refugees and asylum seekers. We need to take a better look at how we recruit into the civil service and make sure that people are put in places and in jobs where their skills are going to be best used. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Change from the ground up, rewiring the whole system. Yes, some people think that we should leave the ECHR, but why is it that other countries that are in the ECHR are deporting 70, 80% of the people who come into their countries and we're not able to? Because clearly leaving the ECHR will not be enough. That's why I don't want to throw that promise out there. It's another thing that we would end up doing that doesn't actually solve the problem. We've got to look at the whole system. Thank you. Harry Cole from Sun.
Thank you very much. Harry Cole from Sun. Some of your MP colleagues say quite openly that they're worried that you're more concerned about fighting culture war issues, picking fights with Doctor Who on Twitter, than the sort of bread and butter of opposition politics, the economy, law and order. What do you say to that accusation that you don't have time for the sort of hard work of the nitty-gritty of being leader of the opposition? And on that theme, given the budget is on October the 30th, the new leader of the Conservative Party won't be in place until a week later. Are you one of those people within the Tory party who are urging the returning officer to move the date forward so the new leader can respond to the budget and set the agenda?
It's quite an inside baseball question, Harry. No, I'm not one of those people. But it's always interesting. I keep hearing some MPs say this, some MPs say that. Who are these MPs? They give anonymous comments. They're not able to say it out in public. What I would say to them is I got on at the dispatch box against Angela Rayner. That video has gone viral. That's me in opposition. That is how I would be taking the fight to Keir Starmer. But people who say that all I did was culture wars were not paying attention. I was doing my job. I was the Equalities Minister. I had to look after very, very tricky issues like race and gender, things that everybody ran away from. I didn't run away. And not only did I not run away, I defended people who needed help, and I dragged Labour onto our turf to make sure that they let go of their policy of self-ID. Many people will make promises about what they can and what they will do. I have a record that I can stand on. I was able to do things that many other people have not been able to do. And if I am leader of the opposition, people will see that Labour will start to move because I will not let them get away scot-free with a lot of the nonsense that they've been doing now. Beth Rigby.
Thank you. Beth Rigby, Sky News. Kemi, you've criticised Labour this morning, but you've also shown some contrition for the Conservatives' worst ever defeat at the ballot box. It is a bit of a change in tone. Have you been reflecting over this during the summer? What's your diagnosis of how it went so wrong for your party? And do you accept that overturning Labour's 181 working majority will effectively be a two-term project, given, as Lord Maud said, you're in a worse spot than in 1997? Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. I think that the reflective period for me started long before the election. You looked at those polls, you could see what was coming. But what was interesting was during the election, knocking on lots of doors and getting the feedback. People said all sorts of things. Some people said we were too left-wing. Some people said we were too right-wing. Other people said we were too centrist. Some people said we were always fighting with each other. Other people criticized me because I wasn't fighting enough. I should have resigned from the government and so on. And what became clear was that people didn't know what we stood for anymore. There was a lot of drift. That, I think, is at the heart of why we lost. I think we ended up delivering a sort of managerialist politics that wasn't rooted in principles, it wasn't rooted in values, and it didn't communicate why it was doing what it was doing. We were on autopilot. There was certainly a sense of fatigue with the government. But we have to do better than that because the problems are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We see this not just in this country. When I was Trade Secretary, everywhere from Australia to Japan to Mexico, they are tackling with the same problems of immigration, of high inflation, of what to do in a low productivity era, how to deal with China. These are not UK-specific problems. And we need to start talking about them honestly, rather than offering out a new announcement every single day, which doesn't land with the public, which I think is what we did. And on the point on whether it is a two-term job, that's what people said about Labour in 2019. So there is all to play for. Politics is very different now. We live in a different age, and I am ready for a 2029 election, and I think that that battle and that fight starts now. It starts with the May elections, and as we keep running up to the end of this decade, I think people will see with me a new, refreshed, renewed Conservative Party. I think... Thank you, everyone. I'm being told that that is all we have time for. I'm very sorry to those who still had questions, but I want to thank you all for coming and to thank you for your energy as well. I feel renewed. I hope you all do. So now it is time for us to do the same for our country. Thanks, everybody.